Thank you so much for the invitation to come. Welcome everybody, and I'm grateful to be here. I gotta warn you, I get a little emotional. At times. I wrote the book Crisis of Character. Most of the things, my story, it's about my life. It's how my life crashed into the Clintons. I never ever thought I would speak publicly about these things. I thought I'd take them into the ground like a lot of other people did. But as you know, through the years, there's been people that worked in the Secret Service, mostly Secret Service agents, where I was a uniform division officer, who would tell their stories. About 2 years ago, a friend of mine came to me and said, you should tell your story. And I said, you should stop drinking. So I heard them out. And they struck a couple chords with me that compelled me to consider it. And one of them was, it would be therapeutic for you. And they reminded me of how angry I was about some of the things that happened. So we started writing the book. My co-writer, Grant Schmidt, and I, and we got some financial backing, and so we moved forward with it. I talked to my wife at first, but then she decided, like I did, that it was important. So basically, Crisis of Character is about my life. It revolves around the years that I worked in the White House. I was in the Secret Service Uniform Division from 1991 to 2003. And I had many jobs in the Uniform Division, but most of the stuff that I talk about revolves around my time when I worked in the West Wing outside the Oval Office. And really what it all this spins around, one of my unfortunate claim to fame in life is that I was the first employee ever in the U.S. Secret Service to be ever compelled to testify against the sitting president in a criminal case. Wow. I was subpoenaed 6 times and then ordered to testify by the Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist. Either testify or go to jail.
Wow.
That was the Monica Lewinsky case. So I sided with the Constitution, and I did the legal thing. I kept my mouth shut as long as I could. I went with the Secret Services program. And one of the things people don't understand, I've run into people who, like, oh, you're not supposed to tell this stuff. Well, you have to understand how I got where I was. All the information that Judge Ken Starr wanted, the gentleman that was investigating President Bill Clinton and his relationship with Monica Lewinsky, all the information that Judge Starr wanted could have been given to him by the executives in the Secret Service. The people that ran the agents detail, the executives, the deputy directors, they knew everything that we knew. But they wanted to protect their careers. So they sacrificed approximately 20, maybe 24, 25 uniform division officers. They pushed us forward, a few junior agents, one senior agent that wasn't even working on the detail at the time. And so we went through this. And the one thing you have to realize, and when I say this to people who defend the Clintons, when I say this, they usually stop talking and get mad at me and call me a name. And here's the bottom line. All this could have been avoided if one man, President Bill Clinton, stepped forward and did what a man's supposed to do. Tell the truth and do the right thing. He did not. He did what he had done in his previous life, which is lie, spin things around, blame other people, and continue to do what he does. And clearly he has some kind of impulse issue. We won't get into that. I see children in the audience. I am going to warn you, if you bought my book in audio and you're playing in the car with your kids, I'm just preparing you. Some of the stuff's a little racist. So, one of the, I mentioned earlier about the being cathartic. It is. And, but more being cathartic for me, I see it being a good thing for the rest of the country, because here's the thing. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, and whether you believe in religion or not, a lot of people, most people believe that the people that run their municipalities, their country, their state, whatever, they want a certain amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Clarity, not clarity.
Transparent.
Yeah. Honesty, thank you. Honesty, but transparency is what I'm looking for. You're never going to get transparency out of the Democratic Party. You're never going to find transparency from the Clintons unless somebody like me comes forward. Now, I'm not justifying what I've done. I'll have to live with that. But this is the only way you're going to find out how these people really are. And there is no, I mean, there's nothing, at this point, what I've seen in my life, short of foul language, there's nothing I can say that would be incorrect. I mean, they're crooked. They are, the Hillary Clinton that I know, that I protected for 8 years, and understand this will give you a better idea of the type of people I am and other people that work in the Secret Service. If I was still in the Secret Service Uniform Division and she got elected, I would still protect her because that's the job. And that's what those people will do. And hopefully they won't have to worry about it because it'll be Donald Trump in there. But people do those jobs, do the job like that because that's what they signed up to do. Just like the police officer that protects this county and the state, they do the job that's tough. And they do it for everybody. They do it fairly. Regardless of what you hear sometimes recently, police try to do the right thing all the time. So the Hillary Clinton that I protected is almost like a Jekyll and Hyde. She, 1 minute she would, I was doing a tour for a group of women from Arkansas. One of my other positions in the White House was in the tour section. Donna will remember that.
Yes.
Donna actually trained me when I first came on into the Secret Service back in 1990. So I'm giving this tour right now. And before, 2 hours before I did the tour, I had a run-in with one of Mrs. Clinton's staff people and Mrs. Clinton eventually. And to make a long story short, and not to give all the book away, basically I got berated. I was called the back end of a donkey, and that pretty much the whole uniform division should be fired. And then a little while later, the First Lady came and told me pretty much the same thing. Now, I'd heard it from her before. This behavior that I described in the book, this is not a one-time thing, and this is not just the way she treated me. This is the way she treated everybody. This woman clearly despises law enforcement and the military. And I don't say that lightly, because I'm both. And I am former Air Force, and as you know, I'm a former police officer. I take it very seriously. And you cannot believe, thank you, you cannot believe the way this woman has treated people like this her whole life. So if I want to back up just a minute. If you go back to the early 1990s, late 80s, when they started running to leave Arkansas for Bill Clinton to become president, we heard all these crazy stories. They reported it in the tabloids, and then the news, mainstream media reported it a little bit. And you know, these stories about Bill Clinton and his behavior with women, and Mrs. Clinton and her behavior towards people, her anger, all that was all tabloid magazine. That's because the Republicans spin that way. The Republicans make these stories up. Let me tell you, every single thing that you ever heard in the tabloid or in the news about them was true, because when they got to Washington, D.C., they brought the roadshow with them. And if you don't believe me, just take a chance to read my book. There's a lot of other good books out there from former FBI agents, some Secret Service people, that also tell you similar things. My book is a little unique because it's in first person. This is how it happened to me. Now, you can take what happened to me, and I can give you 25 other names and it happened to them too. It's just that the investigators, Judge Ken Starr's investigation, focused on me in the beginning because of the positions that I had. And one of the things that he did, he was a pretty good investigator. When he started investigating the people in the White House, the first thing he did is got a list of people that were fired or let go. And then he went to them first. And unfortunately, some of those people that were let go, I was high on their, hammer you list later in life. So they propelled me forward. Now, don't get me wrong. What they told them was true. I did work there. I had seen a lot of things. And then that's how they got locked on me. And next thing you know, the subpoenas started flying. And I was, like I said, I was subpoenaed 6 times. And I won't describe to you anymore. I don't want to ruin the book for you. I will tell you that when it comes to their behavior, what I started to mention before about their behavior in Arkansas is what I saw in Washington, D.C. It's the same behavior you saw from her as Secretary of State. When she looked at everybody in the eye, the cameras in the eye, and said, what difference does it make anyway? Let me define that how I saw from my experience. How dare you question anything I do?
Right.
That's dictatorship. That's not leadership. I can tell you what leadership is. I watched it from many, many good people in the Air Force, in the Secret Service, Uniform Division, Secret Service agents. Although I have some disparaging things to say about the agency, the individual people, and I should clarify that. I love the Secret Service. I love the job that I did. Some of their management system and the way some of their managers and the way they treat the people has a lot to be desired. But with that said, I've met some really great leaders. And I'm going to tell you what a leader doesn't do. A leader doesn't ignore 600 emails about security. Not when you're living behind iron gates protected by other people that the taxpayers are paying for. It's unbelievable. So she ignores those. Then when the attack happens, I don't know how many people really understand this. The State Department was listening to the attack over a communication system. The military was watching from airborne camera drones. And still, we let, what, 10 men, 8 men with, what, 150, maybe $200,000 worth of small arms fight for 13 hours, while there were hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment and men and women standing around the country, the globe, excuse me, waiting to help them, and nobody gave the message. It's unacceptable. And if there was ever a time that we need, the American people need to stand together and go march, on Washington and demand some answers, that was it. But the Clintons did what they always did. They lied first, they spin it in so many different ways. They tell such crazy lies that it's so hard to believe that you just ignore it and you just go on, the next day. And this is just unacceptable. When I watch those guys tell their story about Benghazi, I have a 17-year-old child and a 13-year-old child, and since the time they were each about 10, I make them watch these movies. I want them to know what these people are doing for us. There's a reason we live in the country we do. And it's not just because that we're all nice people. It's because there's some really nice people, men and women, who do things that are not easy to do. And they do them in places that most of us would never want to go. And I want my kids to understand that. And this is one of the reasons that, when I first started writing my book, Mr. Trump wasn't the candidate. There were a lot of candidates. He hammered them all. Not only did Donald Trump hammer them all, but he spent a lot of his own money. And I don't know, I realize that Mr. Trump's a billionaire, multi-billionaire. But I don't know anybody else in my recollection, certainly not the Clintons, that ever spent at least $25 million of their own money to get their message out. And I think that's incredible. And it meant a lot to me. This is a man who obviously understands large amounts of money. And we need somebody who has this business background. And I think he's going to do very well for us. When I got to the end, when I was just about finished writing my book, and Grant and I gave it the last couple of read-throughs, and it went to the lawyers. When I say went to the lawyers, it went to the publisher's lawyers, and they spent 2 weeks with it. And we used to get quite a few messages like, Gary, how is this possible? How could this have happened? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Because they're the Clintons, and they're like, no. How do we know it's true? And I said, well, it's testimony. I gave at least 10 hours of deposition about Bill Clinton's behavior. There's one story in there where they're talking about Kleenex. I had to describe a Kleenex box 9 different ways. It was just incredible. And so my point is, or one of my many points, is anybody who thinks that they want to support Mrs. Clinton, you're just setting yourself up, and you're setting the country up for another 4 to 8 years of this one scandal to the next. A young woman who read my book, she sent me a message on Facebook privately, and she said she literally felt like she had to take a shower after she was reading the book. And when I first read it, I'm like, oh my God, she hated the book. But as I read on, and her kind message, I understood exactly what she meant. She understands now who the Clintons really are. They're this very, very unhappy, angry, criminal element is what they are. I don't know any other way to describe it. I mean, when Mrs. Clinton and her husband have been interviewed and had to testify so many times in these scandals. One news agency about 5 years ago said that in one investigation, Mrs. Clinton replied 68 times she either didn't remember or didn't recall something. Well, if your memory's that bad, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be running for president. She also, as Secretary of the State, or excuse me, she was 8 years a congresswoman, excuse me. As a member of Congress for 8 years, you don't know you can't have your own government server. How many government employees are in there? How fast did that ring the BS? I mean, really. One of my coworkers, unfortunately, in the Air Marshal Service, made a mistake about 5 years ago. My last 13 years in the federal government was as an Air Marshal. One of my coworkers made a mistake. He took his schedule and he put it on the side of the refrigerator so his family would know where he was for the month, how to get a hold of him. You know, we travel all over the world. He made the mistake one night out at a pub with the supervisor, told the supervisor he had the schedule on the side of the refrigerator. So they wrote him up and they fired him. He had 5 years on as an Air Marshal, and they fired him for one mistake. Now, I get what my coworker did was wrong. You know what? Bring him in, write him up, suspend him for 2 weeks. The Secretary of State has 110 classified emails on a private server that had less security than the handheld device you have in your hand right now, the phone you have. So think about that. He's Secretary of State, 110 classified emails. The FBI director looks us right in the eye and told us that was the truth, and then told us 5 times that she lied. So you know what those messages are, those classified messages are? They're our friends, our brothers, our military, our sisters. There are people that are doing those nasty things that I talked about. That's their lives that she has no regard whatsoever for. So, this is one of the reasons that as my book finished up and I saw that Donald Trump was going to be the candidate, that I realized that I had to come out and I had to support him. And I want people to know, it's important. I don't care if from now on anybody ever purchases my book again. I want you to know what the truth is. You know, find out what the truth is. And one of the ways you can find out the truth about how they function is to read my book. And maybe go back and research the tabloid magazines from the late 80s. But the main thrust here is that I want to get across to you that the Hillary Clinton that you see on TV is complete fiction. And I also have another concern in the last couple of months. I've been watching her behavior. She appears to have health issues. And I don't say this, you know, I wish bad health on nobody. And I wish no harm to them. I don't. I wish them no ill will. I just don't want her to be president of the United States.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you flat out, and you probably already know this. In the early 90s, when Bill Clinton was elected, we got Bill and Hillary. And if we get Hillary again, if we get Hillary, we're going to get Hillary and Bill. And my first question would be, if she did win, and I haven't heard anybody from CNN ask her this question. They've got all the time in the world to trash me and call me a liar, but nobody's taken the minute it would take to ask Hillary Clinton. If you become president, what will you do to protect the women that work in that White House and your husband? I mean, we know what he did before. I stood there and watched him. You know, we know what he did before. What are you going to do to protect those women? And I think that's a real significant question. And you'll never hear anybody ask it. They never will. And if they do, they'll turn it into buffoonery. But mark my words, if they get in there, they'll be no different than what it was when he was president. And it scares me. And another thing I'd like to point out to you, how long have I been talking? Too long? Good? We got a couple more points.
It's ready, Gary. Don't want to leave.
Okay, it's ready. Okay. So, thank you. So, one of the things I like to point out when I talk about, you know, when you get President Bill Clinton, you got Hillary and vice versa. I tried for the life of me to think, you know, I try to be open-minded, try to be fair about things. You know, I can't think of one positive thing. And of course, I'm a little biased after, you know, the things that I went through. One positive thing that he did as president, as far as the country went. It seemed like everything he was involved in was self-serving. And you see that when you read my book. And is that really somebody, do we really want to put Mrs. Clinton in that position, you know, where she is? I mean, it's clearly that their foundation, the Clinton Foundation, and this scares me, You know, when they left Arkansas, one of the first things Bill Clinton said when he got to the White House, and he was having a discussion about somebody, they were doing budget things, and he was discussing the pay of the Secret Service uniform division. And he was appalled that we were being paid $40,000 at the time. Right?
Right.
Yeah. He made $35,000 as the governor. Based on what we saw you what you did when you were governor, you were overpaid. So, and he brought that same mentality to the White House. And you know, when you hear these stories, and again, they seem so crazy, they're hard to believe, but it's true. They sit on a foundation worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and most of that money was given to them by the heads of foreign countries. As an employee of the Secret Service, if we went on a detail out to California, and we did many times, and we went into a diner before we went, and we were in uniform, if that guy tried to comp us the meal, we couldn't do it. We had, and they would insist on it, and then we would leave like a $200 tip from 20 people or whatever. You weren't allowed to do it. So, again, this is another part of the theme of my book. There's two sets of rules. There's the rules for the Clintons and the rules for the rest of us. And those rules for the rest of us are the law. I find it hard to believe that 90% of the country doesn't see this, that they just, you know, that they do whatever they want. And then if you tell them that they're wrong, then what's the first thing Mrs. Clinton tried to say about the server? First, it wasn't true, there wasn't a server. Right, there wasn't a server. And she only used one device. And there was multiple devices, and there's actually probably more than one server. And then it was all right because Colin Powell did. Well, no, he didn't. Colin Powell did not do what she did. And matter of fact, he just spoke about it recently. So then it was, where we are now is that she did have this server. The IT people and being in the position that I was, I can tell you how this went. Because she is horrendous to the people that work for her. And I use this term, excuse me, to make a point. She despises, as I said before, the military, law enforcement. She doesn't like the little people. And that's probably everybody in this room. Anybody that's not at her level in her mind. You know, the uniform division, the people that work in her office. She had these three women that used to work for her in Arkansas that worked with her at the White House. So afraid of her, they were terrified. I just can't imagine functioning like that and having to work in those conditions. But she had that server. She lied about it, they spun it. Now here we are. The server exists. Now she's blaming the IT people. There were at least 110 classified emails on there. And she wants a promotion. And it's not a promotion that anybody should give her. It's insane. So I'll start wrapping it up. And here's how I'm going to wrap it up. Anything that comes out of her mouth is untrue. I mean, and a lot of people will say, you know, even if there was somebody here that was supported her, I'd say, you know, give me an example.
Right.
I'd say, no problem. Where do you want me to start? I mean, when she tried to blame her husband's infidelity on the right-wing conspiracy. You know what my first thought was when I figured out what was going on with the intern and him? I was afraid she was a Russian spy. I mean, he exposed, you know, maybe that's the wrong word. Sorry. I didn't do that on purpose, but I'm going to remember that. His behavior exposed us and our secrets too at that time. I mean, who knew she was just, I described her as a cross between a rock star, groupie, and a stalker. You know, who knew that's all it was? Nobody did. And that's one of my fears. You know, what else? So we already know that they've exposed, but by having the Clinton Foundation. I mean, what does she owe these other people for all that money? What does she owe these other countries? What does she promise them? I mean, there's already been news reports on the fact that we've sold quite a bit of uranium to the Russians. That doesn't sound normal to me. Does that?
Our whole supply.
Does GM give its steel to Ford? No, I don't think they do. It's not normal. And it at least leads you to believe that there's something wrong there. There's something at least shady. And that's the thing with the Clintons. It's always shady. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's really legitimate that you don't question. And when I say to you, that everything out of her mouth is a lie. I mean, there are many, many examples. I mean, right now, I mentioned her health, and what's the first thing you say? Oh, well, the doctor says she's fine. What doctor? Dr. Seuss?
Exactly.
Yeah. And again, I'm not making light of her health, but it's, you know, that job, I would tell you, myself, and there's a couple other people I've just met in this room, and Donna, who know what it's like to, we've watched presidents function. That job is tough.
Yeah.
It is nonstop, it is 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, if you're not in great health, and you've seen this, you've seen presidents, my favorite example is Jimmy Carter. What he looked like the day he went in and the day he left, he was older than his grandfather. That's what he looked like. You know, it was horrendous. It takes a toll on all of them. And again, I don't wish any harm to anybody, but her health, I'm concerned. And when you put that together with the fact that you've been telling these incredible lies for 30 years, I mean, they don't even know which lie they told the last time they told
No, they can't keep
a lie.
it straight.
They can't keep it straight. This is the person that the Democrats are running for President of the United States. Again, I appreciate everybody hearing me out, and those of you who have read my book, and if you hadn't, and if you do read it, pass it on to somebody else. Am I supposed to take, am I taking questions?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna stop yapping. Please, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I
How are
can't
you?
tell you from the bottom of my heart how proud I am of you.
Thank you.
As your training officer,
Yeah.
you've done well, my
Thank
friend.
you.
And what I want you to also know, you did the right thing, and that's more important than anything in life. Secondly, I have another lie to add to
Sure.
the collection of lies. Hillary Clinton is now blaming Colin Powell for her giving her the idea to have a private sector. Okay. Second of all, having been there during the Reagan-Bush years, the decorum in the West Wing, as you know, was at this level.
Yes.
Once the Clintons took over, it came down here.
It did.
Okay, so if you have any, describe the clothing, the folks that would go in and out of the White House.
Yeah, so there's actually a couple funny stories. One of them's actually in the book, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So, actually there's two of them. One was, just like you said, a lot of the people that got the Clintons, that were instrumental in getting President Bill Clinton elected, you know, and sometimes when I talk about it, it almost sounds like I admire them. And don't get me wrong, I don't admire their politics. But if you know, Stephanopoulos and Rahm Emanuel and some of these other people, if they were curing cancer, they probably would have done it. Because if you could get that guy, after the way he behaved, to look like he did, and then become president for 8 years, you're a magician. You're not a politician, you're a magician. So, one of the funny stories that happened to me, I was standing outside the Oval Office on a Sunday night, and these two guys come walking up. One's kind of heavy set, one's real skinny and tall, and the heavy set guy has this big necklace around him with these really beautiful metal rings, you know. And in my post outside the Oval Office, you know, there's a rope there, and there's a little cadenza that has alarms in it. Anyway, so I'm standing in my post, they walk right up to me, and the guy gets really close, kind of, you know, in my space. Police officers, we have space, you know, and just like everybody does, but ours is a little bit further. So he starts kind of getting in my space, and I try to take a step back, but I can't because, you know, the rope's right there. So he puts his thumb underneath this necklace and he goes, "This is my gay pride necklace." And I go, "Oh, nice. Congratulations, you know, what are you going to say?" One, it's nice to meet you too. I don't need to know that part of your life. You know, we just met. So, but anyway, I got what he was saying. He was looking for a reaction because I was a police officer. I had to be a bigot, right? I had to dislike gays, which, you know, it's not my business. So, as he says a couple more things to me, and his friend's standing there, and I said, "Well, you know, first of all, back up a little bit, and two, you know, nice meeting you." And I said, "Where's your pass?" And then one guy pulls his pass out of his pocket, and I said, "You need to wear the pass at all times." And Donna, he looks at me and he goes, "You'll have to understand, we're in charge now." So I said, "Well, you know, I'm not sure it works that way. You know, again, let me introduce myself. I'm Gary Byrne from the Secret Service, and there's rules here, and you know." So anyway, there was a little bit of small talk. So they start walking down the hallway, and as they're walking to my left, which would be towards the Chief of Staff's office, I look, and the one guy he's doing this on the walls and the furniture, and he's putting stickers on the furniture, on the priceless White House furniture, on the expensive, you know, So I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? You know, so I run up and I pull one of the stickers off, and it says, you know, gay pride. Okay, fine. So I pick up the radio, I call the control center. Back then it was called band box, as you know. So a sergeant and an officer respond. I tell them what's going on. They go and get these guys, they bring them back. And the guy tells us again that they're in charge. So the sergeant and the officer walked them out to the gate, took their passes. The one guy, I think, eventually got his pass back to, but worked in the ODOB. The other guy we never saw again. We had to call GSC to come over, GSA, excuse me, and the White House, the usher's office, because we didn't want to just pull the stickers off. We were afraid we'd pull the finish off. So that was like my first weekend at the White House. That kind of set the tone.
Yeah.
So the other funny thing I wanted to tell you, which is, again, it's in the book, but this one I always thought was the craziest. So I'm on break one day, during a weekday. They'd only been there about a month, and I get a call over the radio, a West Window officer available to look at a suspicious person. And I said, you know, Byrne. They said, Byrne, go out to the pool, which was behind the West Wing area. At the back, there's a pool. So I walk out there, and there's this nicely dressed gentleman in a suit. He's got his pants rolled up, his shoes and socks off. He has his feet in front of his pool. And he's just sitting there, lolly-dog, kicking his feet, you know, and I walk up and I go, hey, how you doing? And he goes, good. Isn't it a beautiful day? And I'm like, it is. He says, I can't believe we did it. And I said, I can't believe you're doing it. And he looks at me kind of funny, and I go, do you have a pass? And he goes, oh, it's in my desk. He says, but I don't need to wear it. And I go, oh, okay. I said, you know, and again, I'm wearing a uniform, you know, and I said, hey, I'm Gary Byrne from the UD. Yeah. What can I do for you? He said, one, get your feet out of the pool, you know. Two, you know, you have to leave now. Oh, no, it's okay. I'm like, no, it's not. So again, went over the radio. An ERT sergeant shows up. Yeah, a couple of UD officers, and last I saw him, his feet weren't even touching the ground. He had his shoes and socks in his hand, and they actually walked him down to the one, they would have been southwest gate. Right. They walked him out the gate. That was the last time I saw him. I do understand he kept his job, but again, had to stay with the old executive office building. So that's pretty much the behavior we saw. Now, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of people that worked for them that were professional government employees. You know, they were decent people. But the mentality that came from the Clintons themselves was horrendous. And especially Mrs. Clinton. I'm not going to lie to you, President Bill Clinton was actually a really charming guy. Everybody knows that. But what he is incredibly dishonest. And he clearly has some behavioral issues. Again, my concern is what's going to happen if they get back into the office again. So, anyway, I'm sorry. I was actually taking questions, wasn't I?
Other than maybe Fox News, has any of the other media given you a fair hearing about your book?
So Grant, my co-writer, says, man, we're getting phone calls from CNN, you know, ABC, Good Morning America wants to have you on. As soon as they got a copy of the book, mainstream media, the brakes went on, like it was unbelievable. So basically what we've been told and what the stories are in the news is that the Clintons reached out to the mainstream media and told them not to have me on. And so here's what I know about that. Here's what I experienced when I worked inside the White House. They are famous for putting pressure on people to get things done that they want or to get things, make things go away. And they put pressure on them because they don't want my story to come out. Because here's the problem. They're going to have to bash me publicly. And to bash me, you're bashing the veteran and somebody who spent 25 years protecting the country, them, and anybody else, everybody else, basically, as an air marshal in the Secret Service. So they've run into, me writing my book has run them into a wall they're not familiar with, and that's called the truth. And they can't stand it, they can't deal with it. This is just about my life.